500 episodes. That is hundreds of hours behind the microphone and tons of lessons learned. And today, I'm pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to reach this milestone. So, this episode today is part of a raw truth and part business breakdown and part future vision for what's next with the Proffitt podcast. So, if you're listening to this, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while, I want to share the hard-earned lessons, what I do differently, and where I see podcasting going from here. So if this is your first time tuning in, buckle up because this is going to be an exciting episode. And if you've been around here for a while, you may hear some stories that you probably haven't heard before, and I know you're a sucker for those too. So let's get right to it. So you may have briefly caught on to the fact that I said, this is our 500th episode. And if this is your first time tuning in, hello and welcome to the Proffitt podcast. I am your host, Krystal Proffitt. I'm a podcast coach and content strategist. And we're in for some fun today because I started thinking, what do I want to do for my 500th episode? Because that's a big deal. Like, y'all, that is halfway to 1,000 episodes for this podcast. Now, in total, I recently did the tally on how many episodes across the Proffitt podcast, my 3-year podcast, the Potty Report, my content therapy podcast, my digital course podcast. Like, I added all of them up. It was 1,514 episodes that we've produced just in Proffitt Media. Like, these are just the episodes that I've produced myself. That doesn't include other interviews that I've done, other trainings, like all the other pieces where we've been plugged into the podcast community. 1,500 episodes, and 500 of them are here on the Proffitt podcast since 2018. Now, this is the original podcast, right? Well, let me take that back. We were technically the Rookie Life when we first launched, and now we are the Proffitt podcast. And with 500 episodes, I thought, man, let's go back. Like, let's do a little journey through time. Like, we're actually going to talk about the hard truth of podcasting success and what that looks like. Then we're going to dive into the business of podcasting and what actually works. Then we're going to talk about what's next for podcasting and for me. Like, I'm really going to share with you some of the behind the scenes that I have not shared anywhere else, because that's what I love to do on this podcast, is share those behind the scenes details that you won't hear anyone else sharing because maybe they're embarrassed or they want to just be positioned as the expert that makes no mistakes. And y'all know I'm all about mistakes around here. And if you don't know that about me, you're going to learn it pretty quickly. So let's just dive in. Like I said, we're talking about the hard truth about podcasting success and what that looks like. And I want to journey back to 2018. I have this journal where I said, I want to start a podcast. And then it was 59 days later. I still remember looking at this because it wasn't quite 60 days from when I said, I want to start a podcast to launching the very first podcast episode out into the world. And I remember thinking my definition of podcast success with that very first episode and putting things out into the world, I was obsessed with downloads. I was so focused on downloads and just creating consistent content, like just put something out every single week, that I didn't really take time to get to know my audience or understand who was actually listening or where I could add value to the people. I just thought I need 1 million downloads in my very first year. And I know you're laughing. I know somebody is probably drinking their coffee or sipping on their water and they just did a spit take because they're like, wait, Krystal, hang on. You thought you were going to get 1 million downloads in your first year? Really? Because if you've been around, maybe you're naive. Maybe you're still in that, what is it, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like you have thought this too. If you're just getting into the podcast game, you're like, I know that I could get 1 million downloads in my first year. Maybe that is possible if you have millions of followers on a different platform or you have an existing audience customer base. I had neither of those. I was a nobody. I was an absolute nobody showing up and saying, how hard can this be? I can do this. I can get 1 million downloads in a year. I still have not hit 1 million downloads on the podcast. We're really close to getting there for our YouTube channel. We're in the 800,000 views for the YouTube channel. For the podcast, I still haven't hit that milestone. So even though we're on 500 episodes, we're not there yet, but that has not stopped us. So I just want to throw that out there. I was naive in how long I thought it would take to get 1 million downloads, but I do have friends. I have friends that have hit tens of millions of downloads in their first year. Some of them even in the first few years that they've put their content out there. And I just want to, I don't want to say it's not possible, but I can tell you that is not the journey that my content has been on. And I told y'all, I would tell you the truth here. We're getting the real behind the scenes today. And the other piece that I want to share is not just the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I also want to share the moments of when I felt I had made it, because that was just as important as my naive behavior of thinking I was going to get 1 million downloads. So for me, when I knew I had made it and I wasn't focused on the numbers, it was actually when people that I didn't know started reaching out to me and leaving reviews for the podcast. It actually shocked me, if I'm being really honest. It shocked me when I saw a podcast review that wasn't my mom. It wasn't one of my friends who had listened to the show and been like, I'll leave you a good review. I'll leave you a 5-star review and I'll do it anonymously, but I'm going to do it under this name. There's several of those in the very beginning of my podcast journey. But it was when I was like, oh, I was looking at my stats and realizing I don't know anybody in this town. And it was North Carolina was one of the first ones that I saw. And I was like, I don't know anybody that lives there who's listening to my show. And then different ones started, like Seattle, Washington. I didn't know anybody that lived there. And then New York. And then it started traveling globally. All of a sudden I saw some in Japan and Thailand and Australia. There were even some in countries that I didn't even know existed. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to pronounce this. But when I look at all the influence and the impact that has happened, that's when I felt like I'd really made it. Quote, made it. Like, this is a journey worth pursuing and continuing to keep down this path, because I was making an influence on people I didn't even know. And so that may not be the definition of success for someone else, but man, that was that validation that I needed to just keep going and keep showing up. So if you're in that point where you're like, I don't know if I've made it, I don't know if I should keep doing this thing, go check out your locations. If you use Buzzsprout, you can go into your stats and see where everyone is located and then see, do you know people in that town? Are these just your friends and family? If they are, that's fantastic. I love a great support system. But if they're people that you don't even know, people that live in different countries than you're in, it's pretty freaking exciting and really cool. And that was one of the pieces that I realized, wow, I've really made it. I hit a totally different milestone. But I also had moments where I wasn't sure if I could keep going. I really wasn't. Like, I'm wincing. If you're just listening to the audio version and you don't see my face on YouTube, like, I wince a little bit because burnout hit me a few times really hard before I figured out batching and planning my episodes and what that could mean for my mental health, for my creativity, for my ability to show up with a lot of energy. Because I get comments all the time, Krystal, how do you show up with so much energy? Why do you always seem like you're so on it and you have so much exuberance and you have all this energy? Where does that come from? One, I drink a lot of coffee. Let's just be really honest. I drink a lot of almond milk lattes, and That's how a lot of my content is fueled. But I mean, I digress, right? Like let's not hate on my caffeine addiction here, because the other piece is I avoid burnout because I'm able to batch record, batch plan, batch edit, batch upload, batch publish, batch schedule. I mean, I have really learned the art of batching content. And that, my friends, is why I have not burned out in this, 7-year journey of creating my content. And I haven't skipped weeks and I haven't taken long breaks. And it all comes down to batching and planning. So if you want to talk about podcasting success, it doesn't have to do so much with, well, how many downloads did you get? And, who's the biggest guest that you have? I look at it as I've been able to keep going in the lifestyle that I want to have around my content. And I'm still excited to sit here and talk to you. Have you ever listened to someone's podcast and you can tell, oh my gosh, this host they're bored out of their mind, or they're talking in circles. Like, who even knows what they're talking about? Why am I even listening to this? I've listened to a few episodes like that I promptly turned off. But I just wanted to bring that up is if you're feeling like burnout is a real thing, one, we have tons of episodes on how to avoid burnout. We actually had a burnout specialist on the show, so make sure you go check out that episode. But I want you to just sit there and take a deep breath and evaluate what's going on in your journey. Are you putting too much pressure on yourself to hit 1 million downloads? Or are you putting too much pressure on yourself to have this specific milestone that you want to hit in the first year, in the first month, in the first week? Like, whatever it is, like, let's just take a deep breath and don't put so much pressure on yourself, but look at those kind of intangible qualities about creating those deeper relationships with your audience, or just really celebrating that you have other people listening to your show that you're not related to, or you didn't pay to be there. And that's pretty freaking cool. But the last thing I'll say about this is learning about the hard truth of podcasting success. I wanted to call out what I would tell myself on episode 1. Like, what would I tell my episode 1 self? If I could go back in time and be like, Krystal, here's what you need to know about your podcasting journey. I would tell her, forget about the freaking downloads. Stop worrying about the downloads. The downloads will come. You will have some. You will have many. You will have hundreds. You will have thousands. You will have tens of thousands. You will have hundreds of thousands of downloads. But the thing that's most meaningful is the connections that you have with your audience, and focusing on connecting with real people. And those first 10 to 15 listeners matter more than you think. It's the people that have been around for years. Okay. Like, there are people I can call out by name that have been in this community for years. And I'm so grateful to have those deep connections with them. I can call them out by name. I can call out Kathy. I can call out Carrie. I can call out Dan. I can call out so many of you that have been listening to this content and that have been supportive of this entire journey, and they are in it for the long game. And we're going to talk about the long game here in a second, but I just want to give a shout out to those of you that have been part of this journey, and those of you that are trying to figure out what podcast success looks like for you. Please don't give up. Please look for those little nuggets of validation that can help you in your journey, stay consistent, and work towards those bigger goals. But please don't let those downloads get in the way of you thinking you're not successful, because if you keep showing up, that's a really good sign of success, because I think the statistic keeps dropping. If you can get to your first 12 episodes, maybe it's even lower than that, and you can keep going, then you are in a very small percentage of podcasters who can actually keep going. So keep it up, right? I'm throwing that in here now. Keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. I know that's how we always close, but I feel like it was really fitting for this segment of the episode. So I want to call out right now, if you're feeling stuck in your podcasting journey and you're like, I don't really know what else I should do, like I'm trying to figure out podcast success, then Podcasters Connect is a fantastic place where we can break through some of these challenges together, so you can get expert advice, community support, and accountability to help you grow. So I just want to throw that out as an option. If you have not heard me talk about it before, go to krystalproffitt.com/join. You can actually join us for free, or grab a spot in our founding members price because the pricing is going up. If you're watching this in real time, the founding members price is going away really soon and you need to take advantage of it before the price goes up because it's happening and you need to know what you need to do to get in at the ground floor and the founding members price. Okay. Enough about Podcasters Connect. We will come back to it later, but now we need to move on to segment number 2, and that is talking about the business of podcasting and what actually works. So when I first started, I wasn't even sure if I could monetize my content. I just kept thinking, well, I have to have these millions of downloads and thousands of listeners in order to monetize my show, right? Everyone was just talking about CPM models. And what that means is cost per melee or cost per 1,000 downloads. And then people would say, okay, the CPM is $25 or it's $50. So you do fast math and you can see how much money you can make on however many downloads you're getting. And it's $25 or $50 per 1,000 downloads. And I would look at my numbers and be like, I'm never going to make any money. Like it's pennies on the dollar how much money I could make with the amount of people that are listening because I was only getting like 10 to 15 downloads per episode. And I knew that this wasn't going to be something that a sponsor is jumping up and down, like saying, oh, let me take my money. Like, let me throw all this money at you. I knew that that wasn't going to work. And I knew that eventually I wanted to monetize in other ways. And so I was a little discouraged for a while thinking, if I don't have millions of downloads, what am I even doing here? Why am I even creating this stuff? I also knew that I wanted to create digital products, digital services. The first thing I ever did is shout out to Rachel. Rachel was my very first coaching client. I still remember this to this day. She paid me, I want to say it was like $50. Maybe $50 for, I can't remember if it was 30 minutes or 60-minute coaching call about her podcast. She just wanted to know, how does this work? What do I need to do? And that was really game changing because I didn't know what it was going to look like. She just said, hey, can I pay you to walk me through how this podcasting stuff works? And I was like, sure. How much is your coaching? $50? Like I probably even said it where it sounds like there's a question mark on it because I wasn't sure. I didn't know. I wasn't a coach. I wasn't even sure what the heck I was doing, but I was like, okay, this person wants to pay me, then sure, let's make that happen. But it was so important for that first coaching session to happen. That way we could eventually create our first digital products. And because I know you're thinking this, you're like, well, Krystal, you're talking about successes. What about some of your failures? And I don't publicly talk about this a lot because it is a little embarrassing, but because this is my tell-all episode, I mean, episode 500 needed to be special. So my biggest flop is my very first membership. This was called The Potty People. So remember, I had a podcast called The Potty Report. I was obsessed with the whole, like, oh, the potty term, like that can work really well. It has multiple nuances to it. So if you haven't heard this story before, my dad growing up was a plumber. And if you go back to the artwork for The Potty Report, you can very clearly see that it is a woman sitting on a toilet looking at her phone. I know, if you haven't seen this before, this is a lovely Easter egg for those of you that have been around here for a while. You're like, oh, I missed the Potty Report. Talk about like understanding your audience. I got so much hate mail. Oh, it's not hate mail. I got so many upset listeners when I shut down that podcast. They were like, oh my gosh, why are you shutting down this podcast? It's my favorite part of my week. But here's the thing. It was a daily show, Monday through Friday. It was 5 minutes or less. I did enjoy creating it, but it wasn't sustainable for how I was going to keep running my business and all the things. Something had to go that year, and that was the thing that had to go. But I digress. I was obsessed with the potty term. So I started The Potty People. And what was the breakdown, right? Why was this such a big flop? It was not structured well. And this was totally my fault, right? I'm not here to blame anybody but myself. And it comes down to, I didn't really know what I was doing. Can I freely admit that here? This is a safe space, right? Like, I did not know what I was doing, but I saw other people launching memberships and I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But in reality, what I was doing wasn't sustainable. And I just ended up refunding everyone that paid me. And y'all, it was thousands of dollars. It wasn't like it was just $500 here or $200 there. It was thousands of dollars in refunds that I gave back to the people that joined because I knew it wasn't going to work long term. So you've heard the term like cut bait, like you gotta just cut bait and run. I know it's a fishing term. It's one of those, like my husband fishes, my dad fishes, my brothers fish. And I even think about fishing and it's like, yeah, it was literally cutting bait. Like it was dragging the bottom of a lake. It was stuck on all kinds of seaweed and it wasn't like reeling anything in. I felt stuck. I felt stuck in this membership and I knew long-term that it wasn't going to work. So I had to cut the bait off and just say, you know what? We're going to try again in the future, but this isn't going to work. And if I hadn't done that, we wouldn't have our thriving Podcasters Connect community that we launched multiple years later once I did know what the heck I was doing and how I wanted to structure it. And it is something that is one of the most successful things in my business today. So speaking of success, if you're wondering about the business of podcasting and what it actually looks like and how it works, one of the biggest surprise revenue generators for my business in the last 12 months were my affiliate marketing and sponsorship revenue. Like that really shocked me that it was so much of my revenue that I made in 2024 because these were opportunities that I didn't see coming with really big businesses that ended up being really well for my business. I got to collaborate with Riverside and with Kit and Swell AI and other companies that I never had that on my vision board. These weren't on there to work with them eventually, but because I had the foundation in place of all these other episodes, all this other content, I was able to figure out how can I make these partnerships successful. And that's something I'm really proud of that I look back on over the last 12 months. But at the end of the day, the monetization that I absolutely love the most is still creating digital products for this community, like specifically for podcasters, because I know you so well. I know what you need. I'm in constant communication with people in this community, and it makes my heart so happy to create a digital course, create a template, create a workbook, create something that's going to help you be more successful in your journey because I hear directly back from you, and that fuels my fire to keep going, to keep creating content and keep creating products. I don't know why I get so tongue twisted with that, but keep creating products that will help you be more successful in your journey and reaching your audiences. So I have this concept called the ripple effect of podcasting. And what I see is the more impact I can have on you and your show, then you can take that knowledge and impact your audience. And hopefully they are taking that knowledge that you're sharing and impacting the people in their lives. And that ripple effect is just so powerful. And at the end of the day, I can do that really well with our digital products and services. So that's really where I love like spending most of my time for creating products and services in the business. But the biggest lesson that I've learned about monetization is stop waiting until you have a massive audience because monetization is about positioning your content and not just numbers. Because again, I learned this firsthand in the sponsorship deals that I did in the tens of thousands of dollars in the last year. And I want you to understand this too, because it was a big takeaway for me last year. But speaking of, I'm really excited about what we have coming up in the next few weeks. We're launching a digital product store. So in the future, you're going to be able to purchase digital products, whether it's a Google Sheet template or a PDF guide, or we have Canva templates coming your way that are all going to be catered to the podcasting experience. And I cannot wait for it. We're going to have all these hosted on our kit platform. So you'll be able to easily go in and buy your $9 products, your $20 products, your $40 products. Like these are going to be our low ticket, like implement immediately, like purchase it and get started. But they're going to help you track your numbers better, really implement strategies that can help you grow your downloads and engage with your audience. So it's really combining the two things that I know you really want to do to succeed. And again, it's not all about the numbers, but I mean, come on. If you can grow your downloads and engage with your audience at the same time, it's pretty cool. It's pretty sweet, right? All right, last thing that we got to talk about. So this is segment number 3. We're talking about what's new for podcasting and what's new for me in 2025 and beyond. So the biggest change in podcasting that I have seen in my 500 episodes is people want more options, right? So whenever I first started, it was audio only. And if you did show notes show notes too, that's cool, right? If you have show notes on your podcast website, that's great. It wasn't a requirement. It was more or less like, yeah, you could do that. But audio only podcasts just aren't enough anymore. They're not. And I hate saying that because I know some of you are like, but Krystal, it's all I can do right now. I get it. But let's make a plan to add in some more formatting options because people want options. Even myself, like as a listener, I love the show Armchair Expert. It is one of my favorite podcasts. I don't miss an episode. I actually have to catch up on several episodes, but I will listen to it on the audio only version. But some days I feel like watching the YouTube channel. Like I will watch an episode that I'm really interested in, or I want to see their expressive like nature or watch their faces, or I'm just like, oh man, I really want to check out that expert, or, I'm going to have YouTube playing while I'm working or doing something else. And I love having the options of listening on my phone when I'm going on a run and I don't have to watch anything, or being able to check it out on YouTube as well. And of course, I love seeing their short clips on Instagram. And this is the same for your listeners. They want to see those short clips, maybe on YouTube Shorts or on Instagram, and they want to see the video version on YouTube, and they want to be able to have the audio only version. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do this today immediately. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2018. I have 500 episodes under my belt just for this podcast alone. So I've been doing this a while. I have some structure. I have some framework, but I'd love for you to build out a plan. Maybe it's a 6-month plan for you to not just be producing content in an audio only format, but you expand into other places, whether it's just promoting on Instagram too, or another social media platform, or putting up shorts on YouTube, or writing blog posts for your website that are your show notes for your episode. But create a plan. Create a plan to give your listeners as many options as possible, and that will help you go so far. The other piece that I'll say about this is the rise of the creator economy has given you more monetization opportunities than ever, but these are just going to continue to evolve. So the more platforms where you are, let me tell you, it's really cool to see someone not just want to pay for a podcast ad, but all of a sudden they're like, oh, you have Instagram and you have YouTube and you have a newsletter and you have a website. Well, your value just goes up, and they're like, let me pay you a little bit more for you to promote our product, our service, our platform on all of these channels, and we'll happily pay an increased amount to sponsor those things. Yeah, we can go like, this is a whole other rabbit hole. If you have not listened to my episode with Justin Moore, he's my sponsorship coach and he's taught me all the things. I want you to go check out those previous episodes because it's really powerful when you have all of these different formatting options, and then you can take all of that to a brand and put it up on a pedestal, put it on the silver platter and say, hey, you want to sponsor this? Because I have so much more than just podcast downloads. But we're not going to go into that. That's like a whole 5-hour conversation on different rabbit holes we can go down. So go listen to those episodes that we've done with Justin because they were very powerful. All right, let's go into the biggest trend that I see coming next. AI, I mean, come on, it's been the biggest thing the last few years. It's going to continue to play a huge role in podcasting, whether it's production, it's planning, it's batching. And I literally used it to plan today's episode. I brainstormed with ChatGPT. I'm like, okay, I want to create a 500th episode. And we put together some key themes and it threw out some ideas. And I was like, no, don't use that, but use this. And that's a good idea. And ask me questions about this so I can insert stories. Like, it's going to continue to play a huge role. And I think that leaning into how you can use AI in your platforms and how you create content is going to be really, really helpful for you. And then what's changing for the Proffitt podcast? Honestly, the strategy around here has been consistent for the last 3 years. We're helping podcasters and creators create with confidence. We still produce those weekly solo episodes or weekly interview shows, and I don't see any of that changing anytime soon. So, we could take a deep breath. Nothing is changing around here anytime soon with the Proffitt podcast. But I was asked recently, like, well, what's your big goal for the next 500 episodes? And I just want to sit here for a second and just take in, we've done 500 episodes of this podcast. Actually, if you count all the bonus episodes that we've done, it's more than 500, but we'll just settle on the regular episodes that we've done. And I just want to say for the next 500, I want to shoot even bigger. I want to shoot my shot and interview some really big names in the marketing world. So some of my dream guests, I would love to have Seth Godin on the show, Pat Flynn, Nathan Barry, and since we're dreaming really big, I'm going to throw out, I would love to have Mindy Kaling, do an interview with her one day, or Sarah Blakely, or Reese Witherspoon. You probably heard me talk about them previously. They are my North Star of really impressive women that have done incredible things and built these awesome empires. And it's all about creating with confidence and really supporting other people on their journey. And, why not? Why not shoot for the stars? But that's all I have for you today. So at the end of the day, I am here to celebrate 500 episodes. And I want to leave you with this one thought, and that is podcasting for me is a long game, but the right strategies make all the difference. And not only the right strategies, the right mindsets, right? We don't need to chase downloads every single turn in order to be successful. And I think leaning into understanding your audience earlier in your journey can help you have those bigger successes and those bigger milestones. So if you have not done it, we have so much content on the podcast, on our YouTube channel about understanding your audience, getting feedback from your audience, engaging with your audience. Lean into those episodes and they will be great resources for you to take through your next 500 episodes. But that's all I have for you today. So if this is your first time tuning in, I'm so grateful that you are here. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you are watching and listening today. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.